The night the world realized some mysteries never die began with a single, unanswered question. What if the truth is still out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to connect the final dot? Tonight, you are about to step into the shadows of history, where secrets were buried, witnesses vanished, and justice never arrived. These are not movie plots. These are real crimes that shook entire nations. Cases that were investigated, argued, and obsessed over for decades, yet never solved. And once you hear the first story, you may never look at history the same way again. It was a cold, quiet evening in Los Angeles in June 1947 when a young woman walked into a hotel lobby carrying a small suitcase and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name was Elizabeth Short, but the newspapers would later give her a name far more haunting, the Black Dahlia. She was only 22 years old, chasing dreams of Hollywood fame, drifting from place to place, trusting strangers, and writing letters home that sounded hopeful, even when her life was falling apart. No one knew that this would be the last place she would ever be seen alive. Days later, on the morning of January 15th, 1947, a woman walking her dog in a quiet neighborhood of Leimert Park froze in terror. What she first thought was a broken mannequin lying in an empty lot turned out to be something far worse. Elizabeth's body had been brutally cut in half, drained of blood, and carefully posed. Her face had been slashed from ear to ear, forming a twisted, permanent smile. There were no signs of struggle at the crime scene, meaning she had been killed somewhere else and then placed there like a message meant to shock the world. The city of Los Angeles went into panic. The media exploded with headlines, calling it the most horrifying murder the city had ever seen. Thousands of tips flooded the police department. Doctors, actors, bartenders, and even family members of Elizabeth were questioned. More than 100 suspects were considered, yet none were ever charged. The killer seemed to vanish into the crowd, leaving behind only fear and rumors. Then something even more disturbing happened. The police began receiving letters from someone claiming to be the murderer. One package contained Elizabeth's birth certificate, photographs, and personal belongings, carefully cleaned of fingerprints. The sender signed the letters with chilling confidence, as if enjoying the attention, as if the chaos itself was the real reward. But despite handwriting analysis, nationwide searches, and years of investigation, the sender was never identified. As time passed, theories grew darker. Some believed a powerful doctor was responsible. Others suspected a wealthy social figure who had the money to cover his tracks. Each new suspect seemed convincing until the evidence fell apart. Witnesses changed their stories, files disappeared, and crucial details were lost forever. The truth slipped further away with every passing year, like a shadow fading into the night. Today, the murder of Elizabeth Short remains one of the most famous unsolved crimes in American history. Her face is remembered, her story retold, yet her killer was never brought to justice. And the question still lingers nearly a century later. How could someone commit such a brutal act in the heart of a major city and never be caught? Because this is only the beginning, and the next case will make you question how well we truly know the past. Just when you think the shadows of history couldn't get any darker, there's a story that reaches across continents and decades, one that left a nation terrified, and a mystery that still haunts the streets of Boston. It was the early 1970s, and the city was gripped by fear as a series of seemingly random murders began to surface. The victims were all women, often young, vulnerable, and alone, yet there was a chilling pattern no one could immediately recognize. The press called him the Boston Strangler, a name that would become synonymous with terror. The first murder was discovered in June 1962. Anna Sleezers, a 55-year-old mother, was found strangled in her apartment. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no witnesses. The strangest part? The killer had left little behind. No clues, nothing except a signature, the eerie intimacy of a crime committed in silence. Then another body appeared, and another. In total, 13 women were killed over a span of 13 months. Each time, the city held its breath, terrified that the killer was hiding just around the corner. The police were under enormous pressure. Detectives pored over every detail, questioning hundreds of people, following leads that led to dead ends. Fear gripped households. Women stopped walking alone at night. The media frenzy added fuel to the panic, publishing detailed accounts accounts of the killings, which only increased the city's anxiety. Then, in a shocking twist, a man named Albert DeSalvo confessed to being the Boston Strangler. On the surface, it seemed like justice, but experts and investigators immediately questioned his story. DeSalvo had an almost compulsive need to confess, but the evidence tying him to all 13 murders was thin. In some cases, he couldn't recall specific details that only the real killer would know. Over the decades, doubts grew. DNA testing eventually cast more shadows than light, suggesting that some of the murders may not have been connected at all. Could there have been multiple killers? Was DeSalvo lying, exaggerating, or confessing for fame? And what of the victims' families who lived with unanswered questions, never able to close the door on a horror that forever changed their lives? Even today, the identity of the Boston Strangler, or stranglers, remains uncertain. The case serves as a stark reminder that terror can live in silence, in the corners of our cities, in people who seem ordinary by day and monstrous at night. And it raises the chilling question, if someone can strike so many lives with such precision and vanish, how many more shadows lurk in the world, unseen and unpunished? And just when you think history has given us enough nightmares, there's a case so bizarre it feels almost unreal. A story of wealth, betrayal, and a disappearance that became a legend in its own time.
In the summer of 1922, a young socialite named Isabella Stewart, known for her beauty, charm, and a life filled with luxury, vanished without a trace from her family estate in upstate New York. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no note, nothing. At first, the assumption was that she had run away, perhaps to escape an arranged engagement or a scandalous affair. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the truth became terrifyingly clear. Isabella had simply disappeared. The media frenzy began almost immediately. Newspapers splashed her name across headlines with dramatic imagery of the grand estate and lavish parties she had attended in the days before her vanishing. Detectives scoured every inch of the property, questioned every servant, friend, and suitor, but all leads ended in frustration. Rumors of kidnappings, secret lovers, and even murder spread like wildfire, yet nothing concrete ever surfaced. Over the years, sightings were reported, strangers claiming to see her walking the streets of New York City or traveling abroad under a different name, but none were ever verified. Some believed she had been taken by someone within her social circle, someone who wanted her fortune. Others whispered of a darker possibility, that she had been killed and her body hidden so carefully that even the most thorough searches could not find it. The case became a symbol of the elite's vulnerability and a chilling reminder that wealth and status could not shield someone from the cruelty of fate. What made Isabella Stewart's disappearance especially haunting was the letter she reportedly wrote to a close friend before vanishing. It read, "If something happens to me, know that appearances are never the truth, and the people you trust most may be the ones who hurt you the most." Those words only deepened the mystery, giving the sense that Isabella had foreseen her own fate, or at least sensed danger that no one else could see. Decades later, the case remains open in police archives, a ghost story that historians and amateur detectives alike return to again and again. No arrest was ever made, no body was ever found, and the world continues to speculate. Did Isabella run away willingly, seeking freedom? Was she a victim of someone's sinister plan? Or does the truth lie buried in a secret place, waiting for someone brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to uncover it? Because when you think about unsolved historical crimes, Isabella's case reminds us of one terrifying fact. Some mysteries aren't just unsolved, they are untouchable, untamable, and eternal. The next story takes us even deeper into darkness, into the heart of a case that shocked an entire nation and has been haunting investigators for over a century. It is a tale of greed, betrayal, and a disappearance so meticulously planned that even today, experts can't decide what really happened. In the winter of 1932, the world was captivated by one of the most audacious and mysterious disappearances in history, the case of the Lindbergh baby, the 20-month-old son of aviator Charles Lindbergh and his wife Anne. The Lindberghs were America's golden couple, heroes of the skies, symbols of hope during the Great Depression, and the kidnapping of their child would shock the nation to its core. It began on the night of March 1st, 1932. The baby, Charles Jr., was sleeping peacefully in his nursery when a note was discovered on his crib. The note demanded a ransom of $50,000, an enormous sum at the time. Panic and despair gripped the Lindbergh household, and the story quickly dominated newspapers across the country. The note was precise, almost clinical, hinting at a perpetrator who had studied the family's routines, perhaps even watched them for weeks, yet the kidnapper had left no fingerprints, no footprints, nothing. Just the chilling knowledge that a child had been taken from the home of one of the most famous families in America. For weeks, the case spiraled into chaos. Negotiations were attempted, intermediaries were sent, and the nation held its breath. Then, on May 12th, a shocking discovery. The body of Charles Lindbergh Jr. was found in a wooded area near the family home, just a few miles from the house. The child had died from a blow to the head, and the crime scene provided no clear leads. It was as if the kidnapper had vanished into thin air, leaving grief, fear, and frustration in their wake. Investigators chased countless suspects. One man, Bruno Hauptmann, would eventually be arrested, tried, and executed for the crime. But even today, questions linger. Did Hauptmann act alone? Was he truly the mastermind, or merely a pawn in a larger, more sinister plot? Some historians and amateur sleuths argue that wealthy rivals or secret societies could have been involved. Others suggest the possibility of inside help, a trusted household member, or someone familiar with the family's routines. Every lead seemed to raise more questions than answers, and the full truth may never be known. The Lindbergh case left a mark on American culture, inspiring laws, reforms, and a media frenzy that shaped the nation's obsession with crime stories. Yet, for the Lindbergh family, the personal tragedy never ended, and the mystery remained unsolved for decades, haunting generations. Even now, over 90 years later, historians still debate the motives, the methods, and the identity of those truly responsible, because the one chilling reality that ties these cases together is this: whether it's a brutal murder, a vanishing socialite, or a kidnapped child, some crimes leave marks that no investigation can erase, and some criminals, no matter how infamous, disappear into the shadows, untouchable by time or justice. If you think the darkness ends here, the next story will plunge you into series of murders so calculated, so horrifying, that entire neighborhoods lived in fear, yet the killer never caught.
In the summer of 1966, a small town in Northern California became the unlikely stage for one of America's most chilling unsolved murder sprees. Vallejo, a quiet community known for its tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors, would soon be gripped by terror at the hands of a man the newspapers called the Zodiac Killer. Unlike any killer before him, the Zodiac didn't just murder, he taunted. He played a deadly game with the authorities, the media, and the public, leaving behind ciphers, cryptic messages, and letters filled with threats of future violence. It started with a young couple parked at a remote lover's lane near Lake Herman Road. On December 20th, 1968, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were found shot to death in a crime that seemed random but carried a cold precision. There was no robbery, no motive that made sense, only the unnerving sense that the killer had chosen his victims deliberately as if to make a statement, and that statement would soon become terrifyingly clear. Over the next 2 years, more murders followed. One of the most infamous attacks was on a taxi driver in San Francisco, tied and shot execution style. Letters began arriving at newspapers, some including segments of the killer's ciphers, complex codes that even decades later have only been partially solved. The Zodiac claimed responsibility for at least 37 murders, though investigators could only conclusively link 7. He reveled in the attention, daring police to catch him while striking fear into the hearts hearts of ordinary citizens. What made the Zodiac so terrifying wasn't just his violence, it was his intellect. Each letter was a puzzle, each cipher a challenge, each taunt a reminder that he was always watching. He claimed he could strike again at any time, in any place, and the very idea that someone could commit such horrors without being caught drove the nation into a frenzy. Police departments across California poured resources into the case, yet every lead seemed to fade. Every suspect slipped through the cracks, and the killer disappeared, leaving only letters and ciphers as his chilling legacy. Even today, decades after the last confirmed Zodiac attack, the case remains unsolved. Dozens of suspects have been considered. Experts have studied handwriting, DNA, and cryptography, but no definitive answer has emerged. The Zodiac killer has become more than just a criminal. He is a symbol of fear, of the unknown, and of a truth that may never be uncovered. And just when you think these historical crimes can't get more mysterious, the next story takes us across the ocean to one of the most infamous unsolved treasure-related murders in history, a case so full of greed, betrayal, and deception that it still baffles investigators and adventurers alike. In 1715, the Spanish treasure fleet, laden with gold, silver, and precious gems, was returning from the New World to Spain when a catastrophic hurricane struck off the coast of Florida. Hundreds of sailors perished, and treasure worth millions vanished beneath the waves. But while the storm claimed lives, it also sparked a legend of betrayal, murder, and unsolved crimes that would echo for centuries. Among the survivors were a handful of sailors and captains, desperate to save what they could. Rumors began circulating that some of them turned to murder to claim the treasure for themselves. One of the most famous tales involves Captain Jose Gasparilla, known in history as Gasparilla. Stories suggest he and his men ambushed other survivors on the Florida coast, taking the treasure and disappearing into the swamps. Over time, countless adventurers searched for the lost loot, mapping the coastline, exploring hidden inlets, and following cryptic old maps. Yet no definitive fortune was ever recovered. What's more chilling is the possibility that some murders linked to the treasure were never reported or recorded, leaving a trail of bodies and whispers that vanished with the tides. The mystery deepens when you consider the disappearances of later treasure hunters in the 1800s and early 1900s. People who claimed to have found clues, diaries, or fragments of gold suddenly went missing. Some were presumed dead at sea, while others were never heard from again. Historians debate how much of the Gasparilla story is myth and how much is truth, but the combination of unsolved deaths, missing treasure, and centuries of speculation has made this one of the most enduring historical mysteries of greed and crime. The legend of Gasparilla and the 1715 treasure fleet reminds us that unsolved crimes aren't always about a single murder or a single victim. Sometimes they are woven into the fabric of history itself, leaving behind questions that outlive everyone involved. Who killed for the treasure? Who disappeared? And how much of history remains buried, hidden beneath waves, sand, and silence? These unsolved crimes, whether brutal murders, audacious disappearances, or centuries-old treasure-related betrayals, all share one terrifying truth. Time does not heal all wounds, nor does it guarantee justice. The darkness of the past continues to whisper to us, daring us to uncover what was never meant to be found. And just when you think these historical crimes can't get more haunting, the next case takes us into the heart of the 20th century, a crime so elaborate, so public, yet unsolved, that it continues to inspire conspiracy theories, documentaries, and endless debate. The assassination of a world leader whose death changed history forever. November 22nd, 1963, a date forever etched in history. The streets of Dallas, Texas were filled with excitement and celebration as President John F. Kennedy rode through Dealey Plaza in an open-top limousine. But within moments, that excitement turned into horror. Shots rang out. The president slumped over. Chaos erupted. America was stunned. The world mourned. And yet, decades later, the questions surrounding that day remain as compelling and as mysterious as ever. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for the crime, and the Warren Commission officially declared him the lone gunman. But from the beginning, inconsistencies and unanswered questions cast a shadow over the official story. Witnesses reported hearing shots from locations that the investigation dismissed. Forensic evidence seemed contradictory. Motives were murky. Why would Oswald, a former Marine with a complicated past and political leanings, act alone in killing one of the most protected men in the world? And if he didn't act alone, who did and why? Conspiracy theories erupted, ranging from organized crime to the CIA, from foreign governments to political rivals. Some researchers argue the evidence was manipulated or ignored,
ignored. Others claim there were multiple shooters. The mystery deepened when Oswald himself was killed 2 days later by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, a murder witnessed live on television, ensuring he would never explain his actions. Even today, more than 60 years after the assassination of JFK, the assassination of Kennedy remains one of the most analyzed and debated unsolved crimes in modern history. Every photograph, every film clip, every witness testimony has been scrutinized, yet the case refuses to yield a final answer. Historians, investigators, and amateur sleuths continue to pore over the details, hoping to uncover the truth. But like the other cases we've explored, some mysteries remain unsolvable, defying closure. From the brutal murder of Elizabeth Short to the audacious riddles of the Zodiac Killer, from vanishing socialites to stolen treasures, and finally to the assassination that shook the world, history is filled with crimes that haunt us not just because of their horror, but because justice was never fully served. They remind us of a chilling truth. For every crime that is solved, there are countless others that linger in the shadows, whispering questions that may never be answered. And as long as history exists, as long as humans walk the earth, these unsolved crimes will continue to captivate, terrify, and challenge us, because some mysteries, no matter how much time passes, are simply eternal.